Hello, welcome to AUA Focus Series. My name is Vahram Ter-Matevosyan. I'm professor at the American University of Armenia, the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. And we're delighted to have here today Mr. Garo Paylan. Garo Paylan is a former member of the Turkish Parliament, who is currently based in DC, in Washington. And we're going to talk about a number of topics. And thank you very much, Mr. Paylan, dear Garo, for agreeing to come and talk to us today.
Thank you, Vahram, for having me. Thank you.
So one of the things that I want to discuss with you as someone who observes Turkish politics and Turkish history for more than 25 years is what you have done since 2015, between 2015 and 2023, when you were a member of the parliament. There were some highlights of your service in the parliament that can easily go to the history textbooks, especially your famous speech in 2016. So now, from 2024, when you look back to these 8 years, how would you evaluate your performance as a member of the parliament in Turkey?
I am a romantic politician, actually. I believe in equality, diversity, and I'm an Armenian. I didn't choose to be an Armenian, but I'm proud that I'm Armenian. I'm a Christian, and in Turkish land was always a diverse land, and all the identities used to live together. Of course, there were always problems, but they could find a way to live together. But unfortunately, during the First World War, a nationalist junta just took over and did the genocides and ethnic cleansing, and the rest of the Muslim community most of them were from different identities. Actually, they were Muslim, but they were Kurd, Albanians, Macedonians. But then they said, whoever is a Turk has to be proud to be a Turk. And there was another, actually, ethnic cleansing for other Muslim communities as well. So I thought this was a darkest era of Anatolia, Turkish land, I mean, where the civilization has grown. As you know, Turkish land's history is 10,000 or 20,000 years old, where the civilization has started. And so this was a dark era, and we need to end that chapter. That was my point. Mm-hmm. Lest, of course, so many nation building eras were terrible. French nation building era was that as well. Either nation building, everywhere there were catastrophes. But they ended those chapters, and now they are they respect other identities, more or less. But we were not there at all. My point was, let's build a future together, regardless of our identities. We are these Turkish citizens, Kurdish, Turkish, or Armenians. Let's build a future together, which believes in equality. And at the same time, let's look at the past. What are the wrongdoings? Mm-hmm. Where did we do wrong? And how can we fix the broken hearts of Armenians, Greeks, Jews, and other minorities? Even this state, as you know, discriminated conservatives in Turkey for decades. So all of us suffered. Let's together fix this. But unfortunately, I always felt the headwind, not the tailwind. Between 1995 to 2015, we always felt the tailwind. Turkish face was towards West, towards EU, and we benefited from that. We could even speak about the Armenian genocide, commemorate the Armenian genocide at the Taksim Square. But unfortunately, when I became an MP, Erdogan just established a coalition with the Nationalist Party, and things have changed. And all my service, I always urged all the Turkish nation to follow the democratic path, but unfortunately, Erdogan only cared about his power, and he repressed Kurds and other identities. And our cause, Armenian genocide cause, or other demands, again was hard to be spoken. So during my service, I tried to do my best, but Turkey deteriorated, and Turkey is no longer a democracy, maybe a lost case for the midterm.
Right. And the key reason that you decided not to run in 2023 was connected with this.
Of course.
Like sort of wrapping up your observation.
Yeah.
That
you know what?
Turkey is a hopeless case.
I dedicated my life to make Turkey a democracy. What was the reason? Because I wanted to really, because I had a grandmother in my house, and all her family were massacred during the Armenian genocide. I wanted to heal her soul. Really, that was my objective, like all the Armenians wanted. And where can we heal those souls? In Turkey, where that crime is committed. Because all the Armenians all over the world really put so much pressure on U.S. Congress, U.S. presidents, and other presidents to recognize the Armenian genocide. But all of them recognize what happened. But our wound is still open. So where can we heal that soul? In Turkey. And for that to happen, Turkey needs to be a democracy. We sometimes say, Turkey, you need to first recognize the Armenian genocide, then we can talk with you. It doesn't work like that, because it had been 4 generations, and all those generations are taught that Armenians were traitors. That is why we had to send them away. That is what they know, more or less. But I told them something bad has happened. I call it a genocide. Let's talk about this in this in this parliament, in this country, and in this parliament, not in U.S. Congress. And let's name it and start the reconciliation process. But unfortunately, Turkey is no longer a democracy. So if Turkey, only a democratic Turkey can recognize the Armenian genocide, for this to happen, I guess we need to engage with the Turkish people. But this is a dark era. I guess that the recognition is no longer a possibility for the short term. So my point is always this: why you ask this question? Why are you in DC? Because I lost my hope. Turkish Parliament has no power to check and balance Erdogan, so there was no point to be an MP again. Now, my goal is this in DC. No, Erdogan is an opportunist leader. No, he only cares about his interests. Now, Aliyev doesn't want to sign this peace deal, and Aliyev is ruling the Caucasus policy of Turkey. And Turkey is making this, Erdogan is making this calculation. If I open the Turkish-Armenian border and have good relations with Armenia, Putin is going to be unhappy, and Aliyev is going to be unhappy as well. So I'm going to lose some money or political leverage over those countries. What is West offering? Unfortunately, nothing. So if I can see some credit from the West, I might open that border, but he's not seeing that. My aim is there to convince U.S. government to talk with Erdogan, to play a constructive role about the peace in the South Caucasus. I guess that is the key.
Garo, when you say that work should be done so that more incentives are created for Erdogan in the West, so who is going to do that job? How the Armenian lobbying institutions in the DC are positioned to do that job? What are your observations about the modus operandi of Armenian organizations working in the DC?
There are 2 million Armenians living in the United States. It is a huge power. And there are, let's say, 8 million Jews living in, let's say, United States. And compared to that leverage, Jewish lobbies leverage, our 2 million people should be quarter of that leverage, isn't it? But I guess it is not even 0.1%. Wow. We need to face this. It is not even 0.1%. Now, of course, I have full respect of all the institutions' efforts, but we need to face this reality. With talking with some Congress people, or they say, oh, we are punishing Azerbaijan with Article 907. What is Article 907? It is $40 million of US aid to Azerbaijan is cut. What is that? It is peanuts for Aliyev. It doesn't hurt Aliyev. Bar is so low. We need to first unite around a strategy. What is that strategy should be? How we can save Armenia now? No, we are always doing this. We are living in the past, let's say, trying to fight justice about past, about the genocide. Now it is the Artsakh genocide. But without might, without having leverage, without Armenia being having a strong economy, strong diplomacy, we will never ever find justice in the past. And we put 90% of our energy to the past. No, I'm offering the opposite now. We should put 90% of our energy to the future. What is that future?
No, I was going to ask, like, what is the setup of our institutions in the DC? How capable are they to advance that agenda? And do you share your observations with the people in charge of the institutions working in the DC?
Of course, I'm sharing my thoughts with them. And I'm trying to convince people, all the entrepreneurs and institutions, to unite around the strategy, which is going to save Armenia. We have a task now, all the Armenian nation.
Is it only saving, but it's also about development? Because there is
of course.
There is this survival mood. We have to overcome this.
But we have a priority. Armenia is at stake now. And saving means, if we can secure the security of Armenia, progress is going to happen. Already it is happening. Last 5 years, there is huge progress. There is huge energy, in Yerevan, in Armenia. But the problem is, the biggest hurdle is the security. And because entrepreneurs or the investors doesn't see Armenians how is Armenia going to be secure? Is Russia going to make Armenia as a Belarus in the South Caucasus? Is Azerbaijan going to attack, or Turks are going to attack? So should I invest in Armenia or not? That is in most of the entrepreneurs' minds. If we can really mitigate the risks of Armenia, I guess progress is going to come economically and by all means.
In the political science literature, there is a formula which is called all we need is security plus.
Yeah.
Security comes as a foundation, and plus is a development.
Yes.
So I think lots of talks, majority of the talks that I also observed in the States is about achieving the first security level. But there's a famous saying coming from the 18th century, if you sacrifice your freedom for the sake of security, you lose both.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, in this case, in addition to freedom, democratization of this country, we also need security plus, a formula that will keep Armenians here and invite people coming to Armenia. Because when you look at the demographics, I always talk to my students about the demographic problem of this country. Last year, the number of kids born in this country is around 36,500. In 1989 and 1990, we had the highest number of kids born in this country, around 84,000. Look at the number of the drop. And those kids were born in this country last year. It's a big question how many of them are citizens of this country, and how many of them are how many of them in 2042 will go to the army, let's say, for conscription purposes. We have to sit down and think about demographics. Now, Armenian government is about to adopt the demographic strategy, which may change the policies and politics, but we need the expertise coming from the U.S. who can help us to implement. So therefore, this kind of very hard truth topics, we should be raised and discussed. Therefore, what you are doing is sort of unveiling the problems that we know of their existence, but we sort of put them in the shelves without willing to open up and face them.
It's a chicken and egg issue. Of course, we need progress, and it's happening. It's already happening. But the obstacle is the security. That's what I saw. Let's say more than 100 people came from Artsakh to Armenia. Some of them are leaving Armenia. Why? Because they live this trauma. And they think Armenia might be at stake in the coming years. So they don't want to maybe face another war here. Sure. No, I guess always priority is the security. But security is going to bring prosperity. No, that is what I believe. And no, Armenian economy is $25 billion economy. It is a very small economy. We have to face this. Turkish economy is $1.2 trillion, and Azerbaijani economy is, I guess, at least twice as big as Armenian economy. So we need to make this economy at least $100 billion economy. And then so many people will want to live in Armenia. Why? People don't want to live in autocracies. Now, there is a brain drain in the autocracies, and those people who have the brains, capabilities, they go to democratic countries. And it happened during the Ukraine-Russia war. So many people from the IT sector and other sectors came to Armenia, and they helped Armenia economy develop. This is a great opportunity for us. Our biggest asset is, I guess, being a democracy. We need to save Armenian democracy. That is a must. But autocracies around us, I guess they are not so much happy with it, because Armenia is going to be the role model of the region. Aliyev is not happy with it. Why he's not signing this deal? I guess the biggest thought in his mind is this nightmare. If I sign the deal, I'll lose my enemy, first of all. I will not be able to save Azerbaijani people, that we have the enemy. We have to spend our money to the weapons. Then his people is going to ask him why Armenians are getting richer and we are getting poorer. That is his nightmare. And the other reason is Armenia is really delivering prosperity to have started to deliver prosperity to its people without oil and gas. And it's going to be a role model. I guess that is why Aliyev is dragging his feet.
Of course, signing a treaty and implementing a treaty are two completely different things. Coming back to this question of opening the border with Turkey, when I do research about the potential implications of opening the border, sometimes people are contrasting Armenia's economy to Turkish economy, but we have to have a micro-level approach. Ardahan, Kars, and Igdir regions. These regions are the most volatile regions, are more fragile regions of Turkey. Poor regions of Turkey. But when you compare them, the number of population is around 800,000 people who are living in these three regions neighboring Armenia. On average, Armenians in Shira, Karagazot, and Armavir and Ararat regions are better off if we compare on average. So, and there's also a huge migration from these three regions of Turkey to Turkish bigger cities. So, opening the border is going to benefit a lot these regions of Turkey.
Absolutely.
And the second is the Igdir region can really become a crossroad. Because look at Igdir's position. It's in the crossroad of Armenia, Turkey, Iran, and Nakhichevan. So I guess this kind of conversation should be more frequently presented to the Turkish audience. And when you said that we have to work with the Turkish society, what I have been missing, I guess, I want to hear your observations. Unlike Azerbaijan, which has a star-holding alliance in Turkey, which is a huge soft power that they're using, Armenians are deprived of these leverages. So how Armenia can be present in the Turkish media landscape in a way that gains some ground in Turkey?
That was, I guess, one of the biggest mistakes that we made. Some Armenians were in favor of this borders should be closed. No, we shouldn't open our border because if they don't recognize the Armenian genocide, let's keep the border closed and let's have no relationship with the Turks. But while we were doing it, Azerbaijan's invested so much in Turkey, not only economically. No, there is no media freedom in Turkey, as you know, lately, and they are really pouring money to the media system, and they are brainwashing Turkish people's minds. What happened, you know, during 2020 44-day war? I was the only person opposing to that war. And I was the only person who was trying to give the right information to the Turkish people. But I am an individual.
Only one, yeah.
There is a huge machine which was saying Armenia attacked Azerbaijan. So Azerbaijan just responded. That was their point. And only they showed the people sufferings of the Azerbaijani people. They didn't show anything about. They only said there were terrorists in Artsakh. So Azerbaijan needs to do anti-terror movement.
Operation.
That was it. That was the only information. But if you know, in Russia, let's say, what Russian media does is, there are Nazis in Ukraine, so we are doing a military operation. That's it. That's how they brainwash people's minds. That the same thing is done, unfortunately, by the Turkish media and the Azerbaijani media. That is why we need to engage with the Turkish people. No, if we engage with the Turkish people, and if we have, let's say, even if we should have Turkish speaking media outlets, and we need to have relations with the Turkish media, then we can explain ourselves. What do we want? And we want to live together. Now this government has a peace agenda, let's say. We want to live together. We want to open the borders. We want to have diplomatic relations. But these things that this government has saying are not recognized by the Turkish people. That is what we need to do.
Someone who knows Turkey very well, obviously, how to communicate these messages to the Turkish society in a better way, which can, in their turn, initiate internal discussions in Turkey. I mean, of course, we have a few websites in Armenia run by Armenians. We have Armenian outlets published in Istanbul, but obviously, these are not enough to make the expected impact. So, what other avenues can be used?
I guess it is so little, so late. No, really, we had to invest to Turkey 20 years ago, really. During that football diplomacy, really, I had so big hopes because, Turkish media was free. More or less free, and we could talk with people. I was on the televisions always, and Hrant Dink was, and others as well. And academicians, universities were free, and so many academicians were pro opening the border, having good relations with Armenia. And because Turkey's anchor was in the West. Now we lost that. I guess it is maybe almost impossible to do that, but we need to start at some point to explain ourselves. What do we want? And really, we need to decide, we need to explain this to change people's minds. We need to try to do it, but we shouldn't forget there is a huge machine which is just poisoning people with hatred against Armenia, and we need to start at some point to mitigate that hatred cycle, because that hatred cycle is always hitting us. Then people turns a blind eye. Whatever happens against Armenians, let's say in Artsakh, they didn't have any empathy about the Artsakh people who were under repression. And I fear that this region is unstable and will be unstable. This is important. And if Iran, let's say Israel war breaks out, now it will have big consequences, and we shouldn't trust France is going to help us, US is going to help us. No, it is not going to happen. This window of opportunity is still open. We need to benefit with it, and we need to mobilize all of the Armenians all over the world to mitigate this threat.
Karen, perhaps the last question. In 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it will be the first year that the ethnic cleansing in Artsakh was completed by the genocidal act of Aliyev, and the wounds are still open, and they're going to be open for generations. So, as someone who knows the DC, what should be done in order to present this calamity to the DC policymakers in a way that, in addition to the Palestine, Israel flags, Ukraine flags flying in the DC, Artsakh agenda can be better presented to the DC politicians, that they know at least the other half of the story, not Turkish-Azerbaijani narrative?
Vahram, I will be straightforward. No, of course there are Armenian institutions who are vocal about it, and they are talking with some senators and Congress people and think tanks as well. But they are saying, oh, we are so sorry for people of Artsakh, and they criticize Azerbaijan, but they do nothing. You see that they did nothing, and they will not do anything. Why? Because we need to face this reality for the short term. I'm not saying we shouldn't ask for justice or right to return. We should insist doing it. But the reality is this: Azerbaijan and Israel are allies, not friends, allies. And Israel is at stake now. And all the US Congress and the White House cares about Israel now. They have huge impact in DC, as we know. And they will never do anything against Israel. Azerbaijan, I'm sorry. Anything. They won't do. They will just fool ourselves, fool Armenians, saying that, oh, we need to sanction Azerbaijan, but they won't do it. We need to face this reality. Of course, we need to insist asking justice for the catastrophe that we suffered. But we need to face this reality that for the short term, return is unrealistic. That's not going to happen. And you know what? Even Aliyev says, okay, come here. He's already saying it.
Yeah,
let's say, how will the Armenians live there? Let's say we are in Turkey, 50,000 Armenians are living there. We were silent for 3 generations. We couldn't speak about Armenian genocide. We were repressed. Even my mother and father didn't know any Armenian word. They couldn't teach us Armenian. I learned my Armenian in the Armenian school. Because there were repression. Then there was a window of opportunity for 20 years, 1995 to 2015. We could talk about it. Now, again, we cannot talk. Armenians are again silent. Do we want to live a worse country than Turkey, let's say? Armenians, most of them who have the chance, now again sending their children to the Western countries because they don't see a future in Turkey.
Yes.
And how can the Artsakh people see a future in Artsakh without democracy? So I guess we need to change the strategy like this. If we can secure Armenia and make Armenia prosperous and make Armenia, let's say, population 5 million in 20 years and make its economy $100 billion in, let's say, 20 years and be a role model, then I guess the biggest threat will start for Azerbaijan. Then Azerbaijan people will start to ask Aliyev for democracy. Then we can see a regime change. Then that regime, a new regime, which can be a democracy, can welcome the Artsakh people. But I guess it might be too late. We see Syrian people coming to Turkey, let's say 5 million of them. 10 years passed and none of them will go back to Syria again because they built their future here. I guess going back to Western Armenia cannot be with war. Going back to Artsakh cannot be with war. It can only be with opening the borders, having good relations. Then maybe Turkey becomes a democracy or Azerbaijan becomes a democracy. If they don't become a democracy, I guess there will not be any Armenian wanting to go back to Western Armenia or Artsakh.
Well, thank you very much. I think I really want to thank you for sharing your frank observations. I think these kind of candid conversations is a must if we want to unpack the challenges that we are facing. So thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
And,
thank you.
I appreciate you all the best.